Okay, so let's assume that you've taken your templates, you've cut out your foam pieces, and you're ready to proceed. The first thing the instructions tell you to do is to take your foam doublers for the fuselage top and bottom and glue them together. I've already done these two, okay? So you just line them up, spray one side, rub them together, and put weights down. And then what I'm going to do right now is do the leading edge KF step for the wing. I'm going to spray this side, and we're going to put it down on the wing. Okay, so I just went outside and sprayed this piece. We're going to lay it down. Luckily this glue doesn't glue too quickly, so you have time to kind of manipulate it around. Just make sure it lines up with the leading edge there, okay? And then just add your weights down. Okay, while that's drying, I'm going to remove the fletchings from the arrow shaft. Another thing I'd like to do before gluing the arrow shaft on is go ahead and give it a wipe down with isopropyl alcohol. Using foam safe thin CA, I'm going to glue the arrow shaft to the KF step. When I do this, I'm going to use weights on the other side to make sure that the arrow shaft is butted up against the KF step. Now we're going to cut out, trim, and reattach our control surfaces. It's the same procedure for the elevator as well. So what you see here is I'm taking the aileron off and cutting a 45-degree angle with a razor blade down the leading edge of the aileron into the wing. So once you have that, you'll use Blenderm tape to seal it down, trim off the excess tape, and then I use the bottom of my X-Acto knife to just kind of rub in the Blenderm and make it really nice and tight. And here's a quick time lapse of the other aileron. Because you don't want the stab or the elevator to flex in flight, especially if you're doing a lot of up and down, the foam itself moves a lot. Even with the booms, you're going to have the center section most likely flexing. So one thing I've added that kind of eliminates that completely is a flat carbon fiber strip. And it is a 3mm by 1mm piece that's about 24 inches long, I think. And you don't need that much. So if you turn your stab over, you're going to make it run all the way just right to the tip on the back there. And what I'll do is I'll create a groove so that the strip goes vertical into there. You don't want it this way, that just adds more flex to it. You want it up and down, there's no flex. So what we'll do is we'll create a groove, we'll slide that down there and then seal it with CA. On the bottom of your wing and elevator, draw a center line. I use this line to help me line up the booms to make sure that they are proportionate to each other. Okay, now we're going to position the boom covers between the wing and the horizontal stab. You need to be careful when you're installing the booms because this has some movement. The reason I drew this center line between the two is so you could take your ruler, okay, position it right there, and then line up the two. As long as these two are lined up properly, which they are, your booms will fit perfectly. Okay? Now what we're going to do is we're going to take our basswood booms, trim them to length, and glue them in place. Okay, so I've cut the booms to length, which is approximately 17 inches, and they'll fit nicely. One thing I like to do before gluing them in is to give them a nice rub down with 200 grit sandpaper. Okay, as they always say, measure twice, cut once. So I'm going to make sure my line is true. And using medium foam safe CA, I'll coat the booms all the way top to bottom because it's all surface area. And then I'll spray kicker on the foam and then we'll lay the two together. Okay. Okay, after you secure your basswood booms to the wing and the tail, you'll want to go ahead and put on your side boom covers. And if you cut those templates, they just fit right there. It's really simple. If you use the V2, it's just a straight edge and you glue it. If it's keyed like the laser cut, you'll just find the notches. I went ahead and attached those with medium CA, and now all I'm going to do is take some thin CA and finish off the small joints. So if you're following along with the instructions, the next step is to install the bottom fuselage piece to your wing. Now, I'm going to ask you to take a break right there, because what you want to do is make sure that these are sanded smoothly and evenly, and also that you have your leading edge rounded off, which I haven't done so yet. So I'm going to go ahead and sand those pieces right now, and then we'll continue by gluing on the bottom of the fuselage. Okay, I finished installing the bottom and the top halves of the fuselage to the wing, and after gluing them together I took a thin layer of CA on the edges to tighten it, and now our next step is to install the laminate former on the nose. Now I went ahead and installed this side, and I used medium CA with a kicker on the foam. I'm using 1/64 plywood, but if you don't want to use this because it's expensive, you can use another layer of foam. It's pretty tight up there with once the mount's in there, so it should be okay. I just like having the plywood. I feel it gives it more strength. Okay, once you've measured and make sure it fits right, go ahead and put a thin layer of medium CA all around the perimeter of the former, because you want to make sure it's all around tight, and then fill in with several streaks in the middle. Okay. Give your nose a gentle coat of CA kicker. You don't need a lot. And then carefully, without gluing your fingers, go ahead and line it up with the nose, and then gently press down all around. Make sure you're lined up with your motor mount, and then give it a nice push down. Hopefully the kicker, you'll start feeling it warm up, and then just work your way all the way around the motor. And then I would take some thin CA and just do the back edge, so it has a nice bond right there, because that's where your ESC and your battery pack will secure. And then kicker that. And there you go. Okay, next up is your little motor mount. This is made from 1/8 plywood, and it should just slide in. Now if you use the template, there's a notch on one side. That side goes towards the ESC, which is on the left side of the wing. Now I'm looking at mine, I've got a little bit of an angle to it. Make sure you've got that motor mount that's nice and perpendicular. I'm going to use thin CA for mine. I'm going to let mine soak in for a while before I add the kicker. I went ahead and set the mount, but what I'm going to do now is go over the whole thing, including this little edge in the front, and CA the entire piece. And after that, we have completed the airframe. Now let's move on to installing the electronics. Hey guys, I'm back from my little break, and now we're going to move on to installing the servos. But here's a quick tip. Before you do that, make sure you have set your sub-trims on your computer radio to 0, that you've set the physical trim setting on your transmitter to 0 or centered, and then if you look at this photo here, make sure that the servo arms that you have will fit perpendicular to the servo case. And as you can see, this is my elevator servo, and I have equal amounts of up and down, and it'll bring it back to center. You want that. If you can't get that, you either need to rotate your arm 180 degrees or try swapping them around. Okay? And for your aileron servos, I put mine side by side, make sure the lines are in the same direction, and then I want to make sure I have opposite travel and that they fall back to center. We're going to install the servo by hot gluing it on the bottom of the wing so that it butts up against the aero shaft and the boom cover. Make sure that the orientation of the servo has it so the wire exiting the servo case goes towards the fuselage. The plywood control horn is going to be cut into the aileron and then C8 in place. I like to use 3/64 music wire and make Z-bends at each end. The elevator goes in the back of the fuselage and is hot glued in place. I like to make my push rod for the elevator out of a piece of carbon fiber tube or rod and cut a piece of 3/64 wire with the Z-bend on each end. I then CA and shrink tube the ends in place. Alright, let's finish the rest of the work with some time-lapse footage. Here she is, guys, a brand new Thunder and Lightning ready to take to the skies. I hope you enjoyed this build video. I've been looking forward to making one for a long time. A couple of guys on RC groups wanted me to make one, and I'm just glad I got to share it with you. It's been one hell of a journey on the build video because this took several takes and a lot of different video angles and realizing a camera wasn't on, so I won't say the most happiest of builds, but I really am glad I got to do it. I think she turned out great. I love this version 3. She's balanced just right where she should be, which is on the spar. So I can't do it in this video. This is the end of the build video, but hopefully the next video you see will be a maiden flight of our new Thunder and Lightning. Thanks for watching. And cut!